Hello my friends, welcome back and good morning. For me it is morning, but for some of you or half of you it is evening actually, so good evening. Before I begin, I would like to thank you for being here and watching this channel because I have also found meaning in my life through being able to help Ukraine and through being able to bring this information to you. Unfortunately, the situation is very sad through which I found this meaning. It's war and suffering, but still having meaning feels good. And you guys helped me in that, so thank you so much. Now I begin this today with good news because you can hear some banging outside. Yeah, that's the construction, but you could also hear helicopters flying above. Why is that? Well, because Zelensky is in Tallinn, in Estonia, right now as we speak. The security is insane. Estonian police and Estonian army have been involved. He came off the plane today, he met with the president, he made a speech, and it was super cool. It's actually still going on right now. Now, I am not able to go and watch him walk by because I'm here in my studio making a video for you. But I hope I see the camera footage later, or actually I'll watch it when it's being edited. Now for the second news. Good news, because France is sending, they just announced that they are sending 85 extra additional Scalp missiles to Ukraine. Scalp is Storm Shadow, Storm Shadow is Scalp. It's a British-French joint development. And at the beginning I remember when Storm Shadow was sent by the British, everybody gave the British credit, which they deserved, but the French were so angry because it's a joint development. It's a very expensive joint development, and only the British got the credit. Well, I'm giving the credit to the French. Thank you, French people and French politicians, if you are behind this decision. One missile, I'll remind you, costs 2.5 million USD per piece. They are extremely precise, they have a huge range, and Ukraine can use them to great benefit. They already have. Many Russian high-value officers have found their end, have met with their maker, sent to sleep with the fishes, knocked out cold. Okay, I'll stop now. With the Storm Shadow and Scalp missiles, due to the fact that they're so expensive, you know, they are not mass-produced. 85 are sent, and that's a huge number. But on the screen you actually saw a Taurus missile, a German missile. And I know many of you already recognized and already managed to comment that you showed the wrong video. Well, yes, I did, my friends. I did that deliberately because the Germans, you have a Taurus missile. It is insanely good. So send it. Please, dankeschön. This, my friends, is an Abrams M1 tank. And this, my friends, is the cheapest, most mass-producible kamikaze drone out there. It costs 500 to 1000 USD, in between of that price range. As you can see on top, it's a heavy battery, and mounted on it is a 2.5 kilogram explosive. This drone looks like it couldn't fly. It's like a bumblebee. It shouldn't be able to fly because look at this heavy load around it. But it can fly, and oh baby, it's fast. This one can go up to 100 kilometers per hour and ram into the Russian tanks. How about American tanks? In this thread brought to us by 27S Pion from Twitter, you can see it on the screen, I'll bring you information put together by him, how this cheap kamikaze drone performs against American M1 Abrams tank. And I know many of you want to know. The Abrams was made at the time when you wouldn't expect a drone to come at you with a heat charge from an RPG-7 and attack you in the weakest parts. In reality, the engineers who engineered this tank, they expected that the part that would receive the most damage would be the front of the turret. So good job, engineers. I would also do that conclusion if there would be no kamikaze drones in the world, which was the case at the time when this tank was developed. On this video you can see a Russian kamikaze drone hitting a Leopard 2A4 tank. Nowadays, FPV operators always try to hit the weakest parts of the vehicles. Here is a good example of an FPV hitting a hydraulic turret of a Leopard 2A4. Your case gets much worse when your vehicle's weak points are too big. And now we come to the main part. Starting with the roof of the Abrams tank. It is big and really thin, about 25 millimeter, which is almost nothing talking in in armor terms? Well, of course, because at the time when this tank was developed by very good developers actually and engineers, they were not expecting almost any attacks from the very top of the vehicle because the United States has a Javelin. The Russians and the Soviet Union didn't have anything similar to put against them. The Russian, if I'm not mistaken, Kornet anti-tank guided missile system is shot by infantry and goes directly on the front, on the back, on the side of the tank. It's wire guided. It doesn't go to the top of the tank like Javelin. To this day, actually, Russians don't have anything comparable to Javelin for the infantry. It is very likely that an FPV drone hit from the roof will penetrate and injure almost everybody in the tank, if not deadly. The upper front plate of the hull is also relatively large and is 38mm, which can also be penetrated by an old warheads like RPG-7. Even if this is tilted, this wouldn't matter for an FPV as the pilot constantly adjusts the angle of the drone. Penetration into this area could result in the deaths of many crew members. Also, we have to keep in mind that any kind of penetration into an Abrams tank and any kind of injuring of a crew member almost certainly can result in the immobilization of the tank. It will damage the electronics. And if the tank is immobile, it immediately has to be left on the battlefield. In Ukraine, that is what the videos show us. That is how the situation is there. It is different than Middle East. I heard some people saying that the turret's blowout panel system would be a problem for the vehicle as there is a lot of ammunition in the turret, and that perhaps this would overload the system in the event of detonation, thus being fatal to the crew in some way. What could happen would be a mobility kill, as the system could end up breaking at the bottom and damaging the engine, as you can see in the image. But I never heard about an Abrams crew that died because of the system overloaded. Well, the truth is, with a tank, almost if any part of the tank, except for the aiming systems or optics, stop working, the tank has to be left on battlefield or driven back immediately. You can manually aim, you can manually perhaps see where you're going, although it is dangerous to stick your head out. But if anything else stops working, for example, the turret doesn't move anymore, the barrel doesn't go up and down, or parts of the engine are broken, the tank has to be left on battlefield immediately. And that requires only one of the very cheapest kamikaze drone hits. The thread goes on. You can go and follow Payan. He makes incredible threads. And the outcome of this that I read is, it doesn't matter who produces the tank. The West, the East, the South, Russia, China, or America. None of these tanks have been developed to counter the kamikaze drones used in Ukraine. The best way to defend them immediately would be to fit them all with jammers, very small mobile jamming units that can be installed of any vehicle, but they only create a bubble about 300 meters around the vehicle. To protect it better, a powerful jamming system has to be installed, which takes more space, but then would just save the tank from the kamikaze attacks, which is the main predator on the battlefield right now. And the final outcome, which I will say, is any kind of modern tanks in the world right now can be taken out very easily with kamikaze drones. That's the truth of Ukraine. My friends, elections are coming up in Russia and Putin is trying to put on the charade of democracy for Russian people, because in the West we already know it's a charade, it's a play. But now the first advertisement for the electoral campaign has been published, and of course it's connected to war. Let's watch it together to see what millions, tens of millions, if not 100 million Russian people are fed as an electoral campaign. A soldier running with an electoral ballot box on the fields in Ukraine and doesn't have a helmet cover, doesn't have a weapon, doesn't have any kind of, it's already bad in my eyes. Shells flying next to it. This soldier, being as a Russian soldier shown to 100 million people in Russia, is under-equipped. If I would be a Russian propagandist, I would equip this guy to the brink to show that we have equipment. But unfortunately, they haven't done it for some reason. And of course, the soldier, Buryat. And they are what? They're doing something with eggs, because we all know Russian egg prices, there's an egg shortage in Russia. Like, this is supposed to be to show to the people that we have eggs on the front line. Although you don't have them in your homes in Russia, we have them on the front line because we're such a good army. What's up? It's election day. Today? Yes. Alright. Hey, aren't you that guy from the TV show? Nah, I just look like him. You really look like him. And of course, these details matter, because remember, this is shown to tens, if not 100 million people. A lot of people see this, so every detail matters. What we can see, kompot, we can see different products here. What they can eat, drink, consume. This is usually grandmother products in Russia. Grandmothers make and ferment like vegetables and stuff like that and put them into jars. We do that in Estonia. It's very tasty. But in reality, hell no. They would not have this on the front line. Never, ever. Filling up the form, putting it in. Who did you vote for? In this country, we have a secret ballot. Now, this is again charade for Russian people, that you don't have to tell anybody who you vote for, and we respect that right to play the Western democracy and freedom of, secret vote game. Of course, everybody knows who anybody votes for. I guess you are right. Let's see if we find any more details on the shelves. I don't see any. Godspeed, fellows. Any more details here? Well, all we can see is everything is filled with stuff. They even have this. Look at this. This is a kitchen appliance. I don't know how to call it in English. I don't know what's in this. I know what's in Estonia. It's like a cheese cradling thing, or carrot. You make carrot into small pieces with it. It's very good and useful, but they would not have it on the front. This stuff is filled like they would be very cozy here. So who did you vote for? In this country we have one president. And he said that Odessa is a Russian city. I am from Odessa. Immediately connecting a Ukrainian city, full Ukrainian city, to the matter. The city that they were never able to take, because the big plan was to cross from Zaporizhia to Odessa, and then the sea amphibious landing happens on Odessa and they occupy Odessa. Never happened, because they were not able to. And boom, what's going on here? Radio, all points get ready for an attack. Copy. Let's get going. Yeah. The soldiers are clean, their faces are clean, they speak normally, they're not drunk, they don't yell at each other. I mean, this is a clean Western electoral ad video. The reality on the Russian front line doesn't have any connection to it at all. But now you know what Russians are being fed. And now Putin's image, of course, Putin's photo on the in the bunker on the front. In the bunker where the troops are being sent before they die the next day, before they go to the meat assault, they look at their, how do you call it, Tsar, authority, отец, whatever you call it in Russian. This guy, mafia boss. They look at him, they look and think, okay, I will die for you now, for nothing actually, for your delusions, and they go. So I find it very ironical and bizarre and strange. But I feel like you need to know what Russians are being fed. Know your enemy. The next tweet comes from Tendar, a Twitter account that I respect very much. Very good news. The war in Ukraine exposed many Russian weapons as absolute failures. The TOS-1A as one of the top positions of this questionable honor. Low firing range and slow loading time combined with easily flammable ammunition make it an ideal target for cheap commercial FPV drones. I'm not sure if YouTube gods allow me to show this picture, but this, in any way if I can, this explosion, I know it even from my sleep because I've seen it so much. This is always a TOS, thermobaric, flamethrower weapon, missile weapon, however you call it, or it is a Russian anti-air defense system. I've forgotten which one explodes like this, but the TOS always explodes like a fireworks. these bits here go out like this. It is a soft target because the armor is almost non-existent. It is filled to the brink with heavily flammable ammunition that goes up like that in a huge fireworks display, and is being able to be blown up with a hand grenade or with the cheapest 500 USD costing FPV drone. Very easy to hit. So these are very ineffective weapons in that sense that they will be killed very fast. But there is another side to that story. If they do fire, if Russians are able to load them and fire them, and there are Ukrainians on the receiving end or anybody, the explosion is, well, it's enormous. It's enormous, it's bad. It's a thermobaric weapon, meaning that it will ignite the oxygen in an area. In an open field, it does a lot of damage, but in a city, it does insanely a lot of damage. It sucks the oxygen out of the blast radius, creating a vacuum which bounces in and makes a huge shockwave, blasting the windows hundreds of meters away from the explosion radius. So this is a very deadly weapon if it shoots. Mostly it doesn't, because Ukrainians hunt them down very fast. This is one of the Russian terror weapons. Before 2022, they were not deployed heavily, so Russia played on the note that this is our thermobaric terror weapon. Everybody, be afraid of us. We will deploy these and you have nothing to put against it. All of this charade fell to pieces in Ukraine. It is true if it shoots, but mostly it doesn't. On January the 2nd, my friends, so 2 days into 2024, Russia struck Ukraine again with missiles and drones, but this one was very different, and I'll go through a thread with you guys made by Dr. Jeffrey Lewis. You can see his picture on the screen, Twitter account. Now, this attack was claimed to be made with North Korean missiles with a range of 500 plus kilometers. It was even 800 kilometers, I think. Now, in this thread, we will see proof that these missiles are from North Korea, and it's a very big headache for Ukrainians because North Korea and Iran have a huge stockpile of missiles that are very deadly, not very accurate, but very deadly if they do explode. And if you fire them at big cities, they explode somewhere, so they are very deadly somewhere in the urbanized area. Very bad for civilians. At a point of clarification, North Korea manufactures several variants of the Hwasong 11, including the Hwasong 11A. For our comparison, we have many pictures of North Korean Hwasong 11 SRBM under production at February 11th machine plant near Hamhung. We also have many pictures of Iskander debris from the combat in Georgia, Azerbaijan, and now Ukraine. And keep in mind, look at this part, the ending part of this missile right here, because this was seen in Ukraine. There are 2 points to make. First, the debris in Kharkiv is very similar to North Korean Hwasong 11A or B. Second, the debris is distinctively unlike Russia's Iskander. Let's look at 2 bits of the missile, the top of the solid rocket motor and the base. And you can see both of the photos right here. Russian Iskander. This is what the middle part of the missile looks like. This is what the bottom looks like. North Korean Hwasong 11A. This is from the factory where they're made in North Korea. And this is the middle part and this is the bottom part. Now this photo, let's compare it to what we saw in Ukraine. Debris in Ukraine, it definitely reminds, I would say this is a North Korean missile. Look at it. The similarities are, to my eyes, 100%. Now, Russia has an issue with missile production. They're shooting them out many times faster than they can produce them. And if North Korea and Iran are supplying there, let's say thousands, because they have the combined stockpile of thousands of missiles, it's a huge issue. Now, if China pitch into that, I don't even want to talk about that. But what is the message to take out from this is air defense systems into Ukraine as fast as possible. From every European country, I think they should give about 30% of their entire air defense capability to Ukraine. I know this sounds insane and crazy. And why should any country do like that? But I'm from Estonia. My country and government and people have voted the politicians who made a decision to give away 33% of our entire military capability to Ukraine. Because we live next to Russia. We know if Ukraine loses, we know what's coming to us. So I would advise, and that is what I believe in, for every European nation to give 30% of their military capability to Ukraine. Because if they don't do it, they will pay later, in 10, 15 years. And that cost is higher. My friends, now in 2 videos I have already said that Moscow is freezing and many people take it as propaganda, and there are many video material about it. I'll read you a very short report about it. Again, in Glimovsk, near Moscow, the situation became so dire about the freezing apartments in Moscow. I'll brief you in very fast. Well, minus 30 Celsius is extremely cold, and the cold snap is going on in Moscow for a week already, which has frozen a lot of the heating system pipes. And if a pipe freezes, the pressure expands, water expands when it freezes, the pipes crack, break, explode, all of that happens. And then they cannot work anymore as heating pipes because they're broken, the water goes out of them. And in Russia, most heating is central heating, so apartment block or even a whole street could be heated with one huge pipe. That fractures or breaks tens of buildings, even streets can be without heating. And it's minus 30, so this is deadly in the most direct way. The situation became so dire that President Putin's spokesperson Peskov had to announce that the president himself, personally, Putin has to deal with this, was dealing with the problem. However, there are many problematic areas across Russia, and experts say that this sector needs major investments nationwide. But these are nowhere in sight. On the contrary, planned investments in this area are expected to decrease in the coming years. Infrastructure is expensive as hell, especially in Russia when it's so big. Millions of people across Russia live so far away from each other that if you need to make one big project, okay, let's renovate the heating system from the 60s and 70s, because that's what the reality is. Most of the panelkas have 60s and 70s or 80s heating systems, which are totally obsolete. Let's renovate that. We're not talking about hundreds of millions. We're talking about tens, if not hundreds of billions of USD. Since the country is so vast and a lot of work has to be done from zero. But where does the money go? The thing is, Russia makes a hell lot of money. So much money that if there was no war and no investment into the military and all of the money would go to the people, to the infrastructure projects, Russia would be one of the thriving nations of the world, G7, one of the nations we could look up to. But the money is used somewhere else. It's a mafia state. Only a ruling 0.1% decide where it goes, and I'll show you where it goes. Tatarigami's thread gives us a very good answer, exampling one of the projects where it goes. This pipeline is a likely component of the Mariupol-Taganrog natural gas system. The significant investment in infrastructure suggests that the Russians are intending to transform the region into a fortified frontline stronghold with a robust military presence. To effectively target railroad bridges, Ukraine would require more powerful missiles designed for bridge destruction like German Taurus missile. Overall, Russia is anticipated to expand its military infrastructure on the occupied territories in 2024. With Ukraine facing challenges such as ammo shortages, on-demand units and limited assistance from the US in 2024, a defensive approach will likely be adopted. Concurrently, Russian forces are expected to intensify their efforts in expanding their military infrastructure. Thank you, Tatarigami from Twitter. But the point here is that big infrastructure projects that Russia is pushing in occupied Ukraine right now, for example, the highway of Mariupol, which would take the pressure off the Kerch Bridge because, then the big highway from Mariupol would go to the southern front. These are very expensive and they're in a war zone under constant drone attacks. So everything sent there, the machinery, everything can be destroyed. So Putin is pumping billions, if not tens of billions of USD into building in a war zone. It will be knocked out immediately. And then Russians are freezing in Moscow. People who need Putin's help right now in Russia, for their children not to freeze. It sounds bad, but not to freeze to death. That's the reality. But Putin is choosing the other path. Now, my friends, today also, for the second day in a row, I will not read you 5 Patreon names. I will read you 10 Patreon names because I want your ears to have this pleasant trauma of my Estonian pronunciation. These guys are all sergeants, tier sergeants in Patreon. You can also be one of the guys. I'll butcher your name. Joe Frey, Jochen Hansson, Carnifex, Tim van der Weyden, Ursula von der Leyen. Von der is like some kind of a title. Please Tell me what it is. Tim van der Weyden, Mikael Haller, James Hanson, Edgars Zalitis. That has to be Latvian or Lithuanian. If you see like Zalitis, do S in the end like that. Edgars Zalitis. It's Baltic, Latvian, Lithuanian. Pauli Halme. Mika Donovan. I've said your name many times now because you have became a patron again. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for joining again. And thank you for all of these people for being a mental security net for me. I am on heavy antidepressants, my friends, because this job, I love it, but it is bad for the mind. It's very bad. So these guys actually help me focus on Ukraine and worry less about financing. Thank you for this security net. Until my next video, my friends, which will be tomorrow. Slava Ukraini, and bye-bye.